On my 60th birthday, I opened Facebook and discovered my son, daughter-in-law, and grandchildren relaxing on a luxury beach vacation in Maui. I wasn't invited. When I asked why my daughter-in-law mocked me publicly for being too old to travel, what she didn't realize was that the house they lived in, the bills they never paid, and the lifestyle they enjoyed all existed because of me, and I was about to change everything. On my 60th birthday, I sat alone at my kitchen island in Portland, sipping a lukewarm mug of coffee. I opened Facebook, and there it was. A photo of my son Brandon, his wife Chloe, and their 2 kids standing on a sun-drenched beach in Maui. Chloe had posted it with the caption, "Finally some exclusive family time, the perfect vacation." I felt a sharp sting in my chest, took a deep breath, and typed a simple question right underneath. Why didn't I know anything about this? Chloe's reply came just 5 minutes later, completely public for everyone to see. "We just didn't want to stress you out with traveling at your age, Evelyn. Enjoy the peace and quiet at the house." Brandon didn't comment. He didn't even hit like. I stared at the screen, but I didn't cry and I didn't scream. In that exact moment, a cold clarity washed over me. My goodwill over the last few years had been completely taken for granted. Ever since my husband passed away, the 2 of them had been living in the upper unit of my large duplex. They occupied the top floor, but they treated the backyard, the basement, and my laundry room like they owned the place. I had practically bought Brandon's SUV for him, and I picked up my grandkids from daycare almost every single day. To Chloe, I was just the free built-in housekeeper you could easily forget on her milestone birthday. I closed the app, set my mug in the dishwasher, and looked out at the manicured lawn. My husband and I had built this home from the ground up, paying off every cent with years of hard work. The deed was solely in my name. Chloe clearly thought I was just a lonely old woman she could push into a corner. She had no idea that this birthday was the exact day the balance of power in this house was going to change forever. I grabbed my notepad from the drawer. Chloe was right. I was going to enjoy the peace and quiet, just not the way she expected. I spent Saturday morning at the kitchen table with a thick black binder. No tears, just cold, hard numbers. Lined up on the pages were the monthly bank statements and utility bills from the last 3 years. I had been paying the entire house's expenses, heating, electricity, trash pickup, and the premium high-speed internet Brandon insisted he needed for his remote tech job. They only handed me a tiny contribution each month that barely covered the property taxes. On top of that, $500 flew out of my account every month into Brandon's savings under the guise of helping them build a down payment for their own place. Meanwhile, Chloe was constantly draped in designer labels, posting photos from upscale bistros downtown, while I clipped coupons for Safeway. I had spent years telling myself that this is just what mothers do. But it wasn't support anymore. I was actively funding my own disrespect. With a steady hand, I logged into my online banking. First, I canceled the recurring $500 transfer to Brandon. Next, I updated my account with the electric and gas companies. Starting the 1st of next month, the utilities for the upper unit would no longer be automatically drafted from my account. I didn't call them, and I didn't send a furious text to Maui. I handled it with the icy precision of a loan officer. Later that afternoon, I walked into the backyard and looked at the expensive patio set Chloe had placed on my deck without asking. They had been colonizing my space inch by inch. I started moving my own potted ferns back into place, drawing very clear boundaries. The Pacific Northwest breeze was chilly, but for the first time in years, I felt warm. They thought I was old and isolated. They forgot who owned the foundation. Their tropical getaway was expensive, but their homecoming was about to cost them a whole lot more. On Monday, I started reclaiming the downstairs. Over the past few months, Chloe had started using my main entryway to store her bulky, seasonal decor strollers and the kids' scattered toys. My home didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a chaotic storage locker for her convenience. I went down to the basement and brought up 3 large cardboard boxes. Slowly and methodically, I packed up every single item that didn't belong to me. Chloe's expensive ceramic vases, the bright plastic toys, even the heavy coats they permanently hung on my coat rack. I carried the boxes up the stairs and stacked them neatly right in front of their apartment door on the 2nd floor. The downstairs hallway was suddenly bright, spacious, and empty again. Next, I walked into the basement laundry room. Up until now, Chloe had been using my high-end washer and dryer because her own units upstairs were too outdated. I unplugged my machines, locked the heavy basement door, and slid the key into my pocket. The upper unit had its own washer and dryer hookups that they had simply chosen to ignore for convenience. I didn't feel angry. I felt a profound, liberating sense of relief. It's a basic law of human nature. If you don't set boundaries, people will push until you do. I was finally pushing back. I walked down to the local bakery, bought myself a slice of Marionberry pie, and enjoyed the quiet afternoon in my clean, peaceful living room. Out in Hawaii, Brandon and Chloe were spending their 4th day on the beach, completely oblivious to the fact that their comfort zone in Portland was shrinking by the hour. That evening, I saw another photo Chloe posted. She was holding a glass of champagne. I just smiled and shut off my tablet. The era of free luxury service was officially over. They wanted exclusivity on their vacation. They were about to get total exclusivity at home. By Wednesday, 3 days before their return, I sat down at my desk. I chose to type out my message on my old computer rather than writing it by hand. A printed document feels official, clinical, and completely stripped of any emotional pleading. I drafted a highly detailed breakdown of the new house rules and the upcoming financial split. No accusations, no mention of my birthday. Just business. I stated that all utility bills would now be split precisely by square footage based on the submeters I had checked earlier. Furthermore, I instituted a monthly yard maintenance fee if they wished to continue using the lawn. The biggest change was the childcare effective immediately. I would only be available for babysitting with a strict 2-week advance notice. No more Friday night drop-offs without asking. I printed the letter, signed it with my full name, and placed it inside a crisp white envelope. I set it prominently on the entryway console table, right next to the spare key fob for the SUV I had helped pay for. I also laid down my copy of the spare key to their upstairs unit. I didn't want access to their lives anymore, and they were no longer going to have unregulated access to mine. I spent the rest of the day with my neighbor, Clara. We strolled through the rose test garden and talked about our summer plants. She asked how my big 60th had been. I kept it brief. It was an eye-opener, Clara. A total eye-opener. She nodded knowingly. Women my age understand a lot more than people think. When I walked back inside, the house was dead silent. But it wasn't a lonely silence anymore. It was strategic. The calm before the storm was over. Their flight out of Honolulu had just boarded. It was Saturday night, right around 2 in the morning, when I heard the Uber pull into the driveway. Car doors slammed, and the kids were whining from pure exhaustion. I lay awake in my dark bedroom, keeping the lights off. I heard Brandon unlock the main door and drag their heavy luggage into the hallway. Then came the first sound of friction. "What in the world is this?" I heard Chloe's sharp voice echo through the ceiling. They had stumbled right into the boxes stacked outside their door. A few moments later, I heard Brandon's low, muffled murmuring down the stairs. He had clearly found the white envelope on the console. There was no screaming match that night because they were too exhausted. but the footsteps above my head were heavy and tense. The next morning, I deliberately stayed in bed until 10. I read my book and took my time brewing a fresh pot of coffee. Outside, everything was eerily quiet. No grandkids running down the stairs. No loud thumping through the floorboards. They were processing the new reality. When I finally went out to the backyard to water my hydrangeas, the balcony door on the second floor slid open. Chloe looked down at me. Her face was pale and her tan looked washed out under the gray Portland sky. She wasn't wearing her usual designer athleisure, just an old, oversized sweatshirt. She didn't call out her usual condescending, "Morning, Evie." She just stared at me, visibly rattled by the boxes and the letter. I gave her a polite, casual nod, finished watering my plants, and walked back inside. For the first time in years, I felt like the true master of my own domain. Sunday passed without a single word spoken between us, but the air in the house was thick with electricity. On Monday evening, there was a knock at my living room door. It wasn't their usual aggressive, demanding thud. It was a hesitant, careful tap. I opened it to find Brandon standing there, clutching the letter in his hand. He looked miserable, his shoulders slumping. Chloe stood a step behind him, arms crossed tightly over her chest, trying to look defiant but failing to hide her panic. "Mom, what is the meaning of this?" Brandon asked, holding up the paper. "The boxes. The money you canceled the auto transfer. The dealership just called me, our car payment bounced." His voice sounded desperately thin. I didn't invite them in. I just stood firmly at the threshold, my posture straight and my expression completely neutral. "It means exactly what it says, Brandon," I replied calmly. "You guys wanted exclusive family time on your vacation. I want exclusive custody of my life and my finances. The free rides are over. You are both adults with good jobs. It's time to pay your own way." Chloe snapped, stepping forward with her voice shaking. "You can't do this. We budget around that money. This is incredibly petty just because of a Facebook post." I looked her dead in the eye without a flicker of emotion. "It is my money, Chloe. And this is my house. If you don't like the new terms, you are more than welcome to look for an apartment downtown." The word apartment hit them like a physical blow. They knew exactly how brutal the rental market was, and they knew they couldn't afford their lifestyle without me subsidizing it. Chloe opened her mouth to snap back, but Brandon quietly caught her by the arm and pulled her back. The days that followed proved just how serious I was. On Wednesday, I heard Chloe stomp down the stairs to do her laundry, only to find the basement door firmly locked. She kicked the wood in frustration, but I didn't move from my couch. She had to load her luxury hampers into the back of her car and drive to a laundromat down the street, or finally buy her own machines. Brandon tried to play the emotional card. He cornered me by the mailbox on Thursday morning. "Mom, the kids really miss you. Can you watch them this afternoon? Chloe has a hair appointment she can't miss." I smiled softly, adjusted my coat, and shook my head. "No, Brandon. My schedule is full today. Like I wrote in the notice, I need 2 weeks head up." He swallowed hard. In the past, I would have dropped everything to accommodate them. Now he was realizing that Grandma wasn't a 24/7 on-call concierge service. Without my financial backing, they also had to completely overhaul their spending. The expensive DoorDash deliveries stopped arriving every night, and the mountain of Amazon boxes that used to clog the hallway vanished. I used my free time to join a local community garden and sign up for a weekly yoga class. My life was finally revolving around my own happiness instead of managing their household logistics. I could feel the knots of resentment melting out of my shoulders. Reclaiming my time and my hard-earned money was the best gift I could have ever given myself. On Friday night, the muffled sound of a bitter argument drifted down from upstairs. The cash flow had dried up, and reality was setting in. 2 weeks after they got back from Maui, the transformation of the house was undeniable. The upper unit was incredibly quiet. Chloe posted a new picture on Facebook, but there was no champagne this time. It was just a photo of her and the kids sitting on a basic blanket at a public park. The arrogant traveler who had written me off as too old was completely gone. The utility company had processed the split accounts, and Brandon had to pay a massive deposit out of pocket to keep their power on, which completely wiped out whatever savings they had left. He walked through the shared spaces with a permanent scowl. During my weekly grocery run, I spotted Chloe at Trader Joe's, intensely scanning the prices of the store brand items. She didn't look at me, but the snobbish entitlement had completely drained from her posture. I didn't flinch. When Brandon came to me asking for a quick $1,200 loan because his SUV needed new brakes, I turned him down without a long-winded explanation. "You should talk to your bank about a line of credit, Brandon," was all I said. There was no debating, no arguing. They were sullied to realizing that my boundaries were made of reinforced concrete, not sand. On my 60th birthday, they thought they could isolate me. Now, they were the ones isolated in their expensive life, realizing that surviving without the old woman was incredibly difficult. My house felt like mine again. The entryway was clean, the yard was peaceful, and my bank account was secure. But the real test was about to arrive with the first winter utility bill. A heavy white envelope arrived in the mail, addressed directly to Brandon and Chloe. It was a gray, rainy Tuesday afternoon when the knock came. It wasn't the demanding thud of the past or even the hesitant tap from weeks ago. It was a soft, desperate scratch. I opened the door. Brandon and Chloe were standing there together. Chloe was crying real, unscripted tears of pure panic, not the performance she put on for social media. Brandon was holding the utility bill and a past due notice for his car lease. "Evelyn, please," Chloe whispered, her voice cracking. She looked at me directly, completely stripped of her usual condescension. "We are so sorry. The post, the way we treated you about the trip. It was cruel and stupid. We can't make ends meet. The bank won't extend our credit. Please, we just need help this one time." Brandon just stood there looking deflated. I took a step back, keeping them out in the hallway. I didn't feel a surge of joy or a petty rush of triumph. I just felt a deep confirmation that I had done the right thing. "You didn't leave me behind because of the travel stress, Chloe," I said evenly. "You left me behind because you viewed me as the help. The bank account that funds your life but doesn't deserve a seat at the table." Chloe dropped her gaze, her pride entirely shattered. They finally understood that no amount of complaining or social media posturing could fix this. They had been entirely dependent on my silent generosity, and they had thrown it away for a snapshot of status. I let the silence hang between us for what felt like an eternity, while the rain beat against the glass. I took a slow, deep breath. I would throw them a lifeline, but it would be entirely on my terms. "I will pay this utility bill this one time," I said, my voice firm and uncompromising. Brandon's eyes lit up with sudden hope, but I immediately raised my hand to cut him off. "Under two conditions. First, you sell that SUV, pay off the lease, and get a used sedan you can actually afford. Second, you have 6 months to find your own place. Your tenancy in this house is over." There was no pushback. Chloe nodded through her tears, and Brandon whispered a quiet, "Thank you, Mom." They signed a simple handwritten agreement to vacate the property that very evening. No high-priced legal battles, no dramatic scenes, just a clear, binding promise between adults put down on paper. 6 months later, the boxes were loaded into a moving truck. They moved into a modest 2-bedroom rental on the outskirts of the city. Our relationship these days is distant, but it's respectful. When my grandkids come over to visit now, They come as guests, and I get to just be their grandmother, not their unpaid daycare provider. They bring me hand-drawn pictures and genuinely ask how my week has been. I spend my evenings sitting out on my quiet deck. The house finally feels light. I ended up renting out the upper unit to a wonderful, quiet young couple who pay their rent on time every month, giving me a fantastic addition to my retirement income. I barely ever log into Facebook anymore. I don't need digital validation to know my worth. At 60, I finally learned that sometimes you have to dismantle the family dynamics you know to build a life on a real, unshakable foundation. I take a sip of my coffee, look out at my garden, and enjoy the absolute best luxury in the world, my total peace of mind.